Welcome everyone. My name is Thomas Herstek. I'm one of the founders of DotVVM, and today I would like to share some news about what we are preparing for DotVVM 5. We have several big features already implemented, so I would like to show you extensible GridView datasets, which we have put quite a lot of efforts. Actually, we tried to implement this feature several times in the history, but our ideas about it were quite evolving. So we several times dropped all the work we have done and started from a different perspective, started a new implementation. But luckily, now we are quite happy with what the extensible GridView datasets can do. So this should be probably the final version of how this feature will look like in the framework. So before I will show the demo, which I have prepared, let's just briefly see what are problems which we perceive with our datasets right now. So I assume that you are probably using the GridView dataset class or the business pack dataset, which inherits from GridView dataset. And at the beginning of .vvm, we put some defaults, some opinionated defaults. We thought that will be good enough for most of the users. And basically, there is the paging and sorting options. And the paging is based on two properties, page index and page size. Basically, we assumed that the most preferable data source will be some relational database, and these databases typically use these two pieces of information to do the paging. So page index, number of records to skip, and number of records to take. We also had the load from queryable method on the GridView dataset, which automatically augmented the iQueryable object that was put in this method. So it would automatically add the take and skip methods on that. But you didn't have to use this method. You could always look at the paging and sorting options to get the actual state of what the user prefers to see, and then load the data in the items collection manually inside the GridView dataset. But this load from queryable is a very popular helper. A lot of people use it. Also, the sorting was a bit not very extensible because it only supported one column based on which you can sort, and then there was the sort direction if you want to use the ascending or descending sort order. And basically everything was designed at the times of .vvm 1.0. This GridView dataset API is very old. It was in the first version of framework. So we didn't have static commands at that time. So everything was done using the classic commands, which take the entire view model, post it on the server, and then get the changes back to the client, which is a bit inefficient if you have a lot of data in the view model. Even though we have done several improvements in this area, but it would be very nice to be able to just post the paging and sorting options to the server and get the new data without having to post the entire data set to the server, which was quite necessary with the commands. There were some ways how you could avoid that, but I wouldn't say it was that easy to do. And on the other hand, if you don't have thousands of records in the table, it wasn't that big deal. But still, we want to make it better. We want to make it to improve the performance. So basically, we didn't want to make many breaking changes. I cannot ensure that they would not be any breaking change, but in the most use cases, how people use GridView dataset today, there shouldn't be any breaking changes. So basically, the GridView dataset class, it remains without changes. It should be as it was, but we changed the base class of this. Previously, in previous versions of .vvm, GridView dataset didn't inherit from anything. It just implemented few interfaces. And now it inherits from generic GridView dataset, and it implements way more interfaces because we split several interfaces into even smaller bits and pieces. But it's necessary for the for what we want to do with that. And this generic GridView dataset, it has quite a lot of parameters. There are like 6 generic arguments, and I would like to show the source code of this class. Right now, I can show, if you go to GitHub and see the data, the feature branch called new datasets. This is the code base I'm using right now. And if I would be looking for generic GridView dataset, it's here. And you can see that basically we made all the options for sorting, paging, and row inserting and things like that pluggable. So these are generic arguments of this class. So this class has 6 generic arguments. This is the type of the record you will be using in the dataset. And then we have filtering, sorting, paging, row insert, and row edit options. So these 5 parameters, they are pluggable. So you can supply your own types. And if you will implement the correct interfaces, then it will work. And the GridView dataset is just this generic GridView dataset with the default types we were using in the past. So it shouldn't break anyone. The paging options will be still of the same type. However, like the declaration, the way how we declare the class has changed in some way. And also, we did quite a lot of things in these interfaces, because previously we had just the paging options. For example, I will show the paging options. It's the old way how you should do paging. So there was this page index, page size, total items count, and things like that. And basically, in previous versions, it was just implementing this iPaging options interface. And this interface wasn't very good because it had the same things. It had the same things in as the class. So like it didn't comply with the open closed principle, and basically it wasn't very useful. However, here you have iPaging options, which is now empty. It's just a marker interface, and it was split into many other interfaces, which basically describe the capabilities of the paging. So for example, most paging features probably will allow the users to go to the next page. That's what paging typically do in database queries, that you load some records and then you want to go to the next page. So here is iPaging next page capability, and it just adds the method go to next page, and it can tell if this is the last page or if there are more pages. Yeah. So this is one capability. Some paging, not all, can go to previous page. So this is like that. Most pagers can reset to the beginning. They will just forget their state and start from scratch. Last page also. And some pagers can use the page index. So if it can use the page index, it has its own separate capability. So the default paging options, which had all these bells and whistles, you can see they implement all capabilities we have here, and there's quite a lot of them. Yeah, e-paging total items count. There are some APIs, some data sources which will not tell you how many pages you have in your data set, how many records you have in total. So that's where you cannot implement this capability. However, the standard paging options implement all of these features. Yeah. So that's how we split the interfaces to more fine-grained expressions of what are the concrete capabilities of each paging. Yeah. So that's what the change. And you can build your own data set with your own type of paging, sorting, filtering, and other stuff. So you can just supply these generic arguments. I will show in the demo that it's great to create a class which derives from this generic GridView datasets with these parameters, because otherwise you would have to always repeat these 6 parameters, which is quite long. So you can declare your own type of dataset and inherit from this. And to be able to load the data from using static commands, to prevent posting the entire data set to the server, we have created the load data delegate, and it's basically kind of method that gets an options object, which is basically just an aggregation of paging, sorting, and filtering options. So you will just send these 3 items to the server, how you want the results to be page sorted and filtered. And this is all you will need to do to return the new data set with the most current data and updated options. Yeah, because if you want to go to page 3 of page size 20, you don't know how many records are in the database. So this new data set will contain these paging options, but it can have more data because there are some information that you don't know on the client, but you know it on the server. So you can augment these paging options as well. And that's basically this delegate, you can use it in static commands. You can pass it to the GridView and to the data pager controls. And that way you will be more efficient in loading the data. So also the data pager component was a bit annoying to use. Again, it comes from .vvm 1.0. So a lot of things evolved in the framework, but this control stayed a bit like outdated. Now it will support better templating. You can provide templates for all pieces of this component. Then it can look at the paging options, and based on their capabilities, based on these interfaces I showed previously, it will just enable that part of the component that makes sense. So if your pager just supports going to the next page and previous page, it will just render the previous and next button. It will not render page numbers because there is no way how to do that. Yeah. So it's quite flexible, and it will just adopt the capabilities that the paging options provide to that control. You can specify CSS classes for the tag hierarchy. This is important when you are, for example, using Bootstrap, because when .vvm was created, there was Bootstrap 3, and you just use the unordered list UL element with the class pagination, and the styling was done by Bootstrap. But now the list items inside this pagination, they need another CSS class, and the links also need another CSS class in newer versions of Bootstrap. And we didn't have any way to pass these classes inside. So now we have it. And finally, we have introduced a new control, because sometimes you don't want to use this paging experience with the buttons, just you want to create something like infinite scrolling. So this appendable data pager can do that, and basically it requests new data, and instead of replacing the current collection on the client, it will append data to it. So yeah, it can be dangerous, because if you would be scrolling for a long time, probably the view model size would grow. But on the other hand, there are a lot of use cases where this will not be that big problem. So you can just create the infinite scrolling experience. Maybe we will do some kind of virtualization in the next version, so it would be possible to like forget the records at the beginning, which you already scrolled away. But currently in .vvm 5, we don't have any plans to do that. And this appendable data pager, you can also specify the loading template, so you can display some kind of animation to indicate that something is being loaded. So let's see the demo. I have a Visual Studio here, and let's start from the beginning. So just I would like to show the default, the most basic way of using the classic GridView dataset. So I have a GridView control with GridView dataset. I have defined some columns. Some of them allow the sorting, and I have this data pager, which is bound to the same dataset. Here you can see I'm using these CSS classes. So this data pager has the pagination CSS class, and the list items inside the pager will get this page item class, and links will get page link. That way it would look nice in Bootstrap. And how to load data in this data set, just what you are used to declare. You declare data set, you can define some default sort expression, default page size, and then you can load from queryable. And if you pass it iQueryable of the same type, it will load the data. So that's the most easiest way how to do that. If I look in this application, you can see it works. And but I'm not doing anything with static commands. Yeah, so there are no static commands here or even here. So this is loaded the normal way. So once I click on this column header to change the sorting, or once I go to the next page, then a full command binding will be executed. That means that the view model will be posted to the server, and then the new data will be loaded, and we will get the new view model. I have created a simple script that will count the bytes going up and going down. So when I click on this, you can see here in the corner that I sent something like 7 kilobytes to the server and obtained another 7 kilobytes back. That's why, because I'm posting the entire view model, including the items, the data in this GridView data set. So that's not very efficient. There is one additional feature in .vvm which we added recently, and this is like client-side compression, because there is a new API in JavaScript that allows you to do gzip compression. And so .vvm compresses the view model using gzip on the client and send it compressed over the wire. By default, the web servers have to like indicate that the compression is possible. But if there is .vvm running on the server, we know that the server like supports this compression. So when it's posted back, we are sure that we can use the client-side compression. So because the view model data are like textual, it's JSON, the compression ratio is quite good. So like actually the number of bytes sent over the wire would be like 30% of that. So not 7 kilobytes, but just 2 kilobytes or something like that. But still, this is not that efficient as it could be. So I have another page, exactly the same user interface. And when I do some action, you can see that now I'm sending up only 800 kilobytes, and I'm getting similar amount of data, like 7 or 8 kilobytes. Depends on the concrete data because they are generated randomly. So that's why it's not the same always. Yeah. So this is much better. I have saved like from 7 kilobytes, I went to 1 kilobyte. There is just some overhead which static commands have. It's something like 600 bytes. So that will be there always. The rest would be your data. Yeah. So because I can show the dev tools to see what actually goes over the wire and repeat it once again. So like I'm here, let's delete that and let's change the sorting. So you see again 7 kilobytes up, 7 kilobytes down. If you look here on this request, so the payload is the entire view model. So view model, product, and these items. That's why it's 7 kilobytes, because like I'm sending all the contents of the grid view up to the server. When I use this static command, so let's delete that again. So when I click on this, and now it's just 1 kilobyte up, you can see in the first request that this payload doesn't contain the view model. It just sends the arguments. So there are just filtering options which are empty, paging options which say, okay, I want this, and sorting options, I want this. I want to sort by name, descending order. Yeah. So I'm just sending these 3 items, and the server will give me the new data set. How to do that, how it looks like in the code, the front end looks the same. There is just one more thing. There is this load data parameter of the grid view and the data pager. It has to be unfortunately specified at both components because both of them can trigger the like refresh of the data. And I'm calling this service. I like the static command services. So I'm using the service to be able to use dependency injection and other things. And this service declares this load products delegate, and it's asynchronous method, and it accepts dataset options. These contain the paging, sorting, filtering options, and it returns a new GridView dataset. If I have the options, I'm able to build the entire dataset because other things in the dataset can be generated from the options and from the data source I have. I can use this apply options to just like take the options and set it to the dataset. Then I can use load from variable, and because this is asynchronous and it has to be asynchronous, I can also use the async version of that. The problem why we don't have load from variable async is that unfortunately in .NET toolist async is implementation specific. If you are using Entity Framework Core, they have their own toolist async method. If you are using Cosmos DB, they have their own toolist async method, and there is no interface that these methods would be implementing. The same with the count async, which we need also to determine the total number of records. So that's why we cannot have load from variable in the framework, and you need to implement your own extension method to call the correct toolist async. We are thinking about how to solve this problem because using async makes very good sense here, but unfortunately, without adding some custom code, custom extension method, it's not possible. So you would have to add this in the project. You can search for load from variable async. I hope it's unique enough. And here in some blog post on our blog, you can take this extension method, place it in your project, and just import the correct namespaces. So this toolist async and count async would be imported from Entity Framework Core or from Cosmos DB or from any other database provider you will be using. But these methods are not the same. They are not part of the framework. They are extension methods. Every library defines on their own. That's why we cannot have it in the framework. Okay. So that's just side note for that. So as you can see, I'm declaring same as in the previous case. I'm declaring the data set, and I can use the same method in the service. So I can use the primary constructor to inject the service, and I can call service load products, give me the options, and get the new data set here. This will be used only on the first load of the page, and then I'm using static commands. So there will be no invocations of the view model at all. Yeah, it's good to load the first page on the server. So when the client loads the page, the data is already there. But the next time for sorting, paging, working with the data, you can use this service. So this is quite nice, and it can save some traffic you have in the application. And together with the client-side compression we have added in .vvm, this will even more decrease the amount of data you need to send to the server to get the new page of the results. So that's how to use static commands. And I would like to show another examples of the extensibility of the new data set. So let's see the page first. Here, I'm not using the database. I'm using GitHub API. I want to list all the issues or all the pull requests made to .vvm repository. So here are the most recent issues. But unfortunately, the GitHub API, it doesn't have any page index and page size options. What you can do is that you get the first page of records, and the API will return you something like a continuation token, which is a link to a place where you can get the next page of results. So you cannot say, I want 5th page of the results, because you can only get the first page and the link to the next page. So if you would want 5th page, you would have to download the first page, then use the link to download the second, then use the link to download the third, and so on until you will be on the page 5. So that's not possible, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes the API doesn't give you this capability, but you can still use it in .vvm. So I have declared a GridView dataset which is using the next token paging. And this is the kind of paging options where you only have the next token in the paging option. So let's see the view model. And you can see I'm declaring it as a generic GridView dataset. Type of the record is issue DTO. I have empty filtering options, sorting options, and next token paging options. This next token paging options, they contain the next page token. So this is where DotVVM will store the link to obtain the next page. We also store the link for obtaining the current page in case you would want to refresh the data or something like that. And also we can detect if it's a first page, because if it's the first page, it means that the current token is null. There is no continuation token. I'm starting from the beginning. Once the current token is something, it means I'm not on the first page. And there are methods, go to first page, go to next page, because the only thing you can do is to reset, which means basically forget the continuation token and start from scratch. And also you can go to the next page. If we have the next page token, I will set it as a current token and reset this. And because the current token is now something, when I access the API, it will give me the second page of the result. You can see that this paging implements only these two capabilities, first page and next page. And also this data pager, this is still the same control, data pager. It knows the capabilities which are implemented. So it will also show you just this go to first page and go to next page. So when I click on the go to next page, the next page of records is loaded. So this has changed. And here, this is basically, now it's not disabled, it's enabled because I can go back and I can go to the next page. Yeah. So that's how it works. And if I would get to the end of this sequence, so this returns lower number of records. And now you can see this is disabled because the next page token is null. So GitHub API didn't return us any link to continue. So this tells the dataset that there are no more pages. So now the data pager can disable this button. So now I cannot do anything about that. But I can reset. I can just forget the token, and I have the first page again. Yeah. So this is the next page token, and basically I'm using this GridView dataset, and here I'm just loading these issues. So here I have this GitHub service, which is using HTTP client to call the GitHub API. You have to pass the correct authorization tokens and things like that. But basically here is the get GitHub issues method. So I'm either using the token, or if I don't have it, I'm just using this link, API GitHub.com repos regarding.vvm issues, something like that. And it will return the array of these items, and in some header of the response, there is the link which I can use to obtain the link to the next page. I have to use some regex because this link is in some HTTP header inside some content, so it's not that easy to get, but it's still possible. So basically, I'm now returning the items and the next token, and on the place where I'm calling this method, I will just set the next token, which I obtained from the API. I will just set it here, and then I can create the GridView data set and have the result items and options, and basically that's it. Yeah. So I have this just in the paging options. You need to store the next token into the next page token field, and you can use this current token field to obtain the token for the current page you should be loading. So this is this method. I also have this method which is the same, but it has this delay. I will show you later why I needed that. Yeah. So, but in the page I'm using this one. Yeah. So usage in the page is the same. I have just the data pager pointing to the GridView data set, and I'm using this load data, and again I'm using this service to load the issues. However, it's different kind of paging options, so the pager will look a bit differently, and the loading data can be done using these continuation tokens. I have another example. Sometimes it's useful to be able to go back. So I have next token history paging options, and this is just extension of the next token paging. It remembers the previous links. So basically it contains a list of the continuation tokens. So you will be able to go back to pages you have already visited. You still cannot go to 5th page at the beginning, but if you get to that eventually, then it remembers the history of these tokens, so I can always go to the 2nd page and return. But until I first access the 5th page, I'm not able to go there. And again, it can also tell when you are at the end of the data. So when I'm on the 6th page, then I cannot continue further because there is no more tokens. So if you would look in the data set, what we have there, basically, if I call .vvm state issues, the paging options, you would see that in this object, basically, we have this token history, and here are the tokens. Actually, GitHub API can specify the number of page here, it's in the tokens, but the specification is written so they can change this format at any time. And there are other APIs where this would not work. So I'm just demonstrating here the principle. But this is basically the token history for all the pages. So once you have visited the page, you already get the continuation token and you can continue. Same thing would be with other APIs, for example, Microsoft Graph API. It's not that easy as to specify just page index. You need to get some other kind of ID. So this is quite universal. So this is just extended next token paging. It remembers the pages which you already visited. The code is almost the same. Just here, I'm not using next token paging options. I'm using next token history paging options. And here, just there are methods get current page token and save next page token. So you would not need to look in the collection to the correct index. We made methods to make this easier. So that was paging. We have also some use for the sorting, because the default sorting options can sort only based on one criterion. So you could just say the sort expression and sort descending, and that's it. You cannot sort by 2 columns. But if you want to sort people based on last name and then based on first name, it's not possible easily. It wasn't possible easily in .vvm. So now it will be possible, because I have created, or we have implemented, this special kind of sorting options, which is called multi-criteria sorting options. And this kind of sorting options, they have a list of sort criterion, and this is just the sort expression, sort descending, but it's a list, so you can use more of them. And you can also tell the dataset the maximum number of sort criteria. So like if there would be more, they would not be used, because any kind of sorting can have some not good impact on the database. This low delegate is still the same. You get the options. So you have to specify the types here: no filtering, multi-criteria sorting, and paging options. And I'm also returning the data set. I have here implemented the class which inherits from generic GridView dataset, so I don't need to repeat these type arguments everywhere. I can just use multi-sort dataset of T like here. Yeah, and so you can see I'm setting 2 default sort criteria, and I can use it in the service. And because it's difficult to make UI where the users can sort with more criteria, I have just created a simple my own editor for the sort criteria. So basically I have repeater, because the sorting options, it's part of your view model, so you can use it in any controls like that. So I'm just listing the criteria separated by comma, and I can allow the user to remove the criteria. You can see here I'm just setting product sorting options criteria remove at the current index, so I can remove this sort criteria. So now I will not be sorting by in stock, so I will be just sorting based on the name. And when I want to add another criterion, for example, price, if I click on it again, it will switch the order. So now it's from the most expensive items to the least expensive, and I can remove the criteria. So you will have to figure out how to make this UI to be like more nice, because this is not probably the best way how to do that. But the important thing is that the dataset now supports that, and you can still use the load from queryable method in your code. So if you have iQueryable, it's very easy to implement. If you don't have iQueryable, you will have to look in this sorting options object, pick up these items, and build your query as you will need. So that's the sorting. So that's it. And I have the last thing. We have implemented a new type of pager, and basically it can append items to the existing data set. And what you can use it to do is to implement the infinite scrolling experience. Be careful, don't try to implement like TikTok or things like that, where the feed can be very long, because the view model would also be very long. And once you would make a command, then everything would need to be transferred to the server. So don't do that. Use this only on pages where you use static commands or something like that, or where you know that the users will get bored before the view model is too big or something like that. However, to demonstrate the principle, basically I have a repeater with the GitHub issues again. I am rendering bootstrap cards for these issues, and this is here just to make it longer so you would better see the loading experience. But it could be description of the issue or something like that. And here, instead of pager, I'm using appendable data pager. And again, it has this issues data set and this load data. And here I have the load issue slow because I wanted the animation to be visible for 1 second. So I intentionally slowed down this by having task delay here. But otherwise, it's just using the next token paging, it's getting more issues from GitHub. And what I'm doing here is the loading template, which is the template which will be displayed during the time the data is loaded. Yeah, so I'm using this bootstrap placeholder to render the animation, some kind of skeleton loading animation that something is being loaded. And you can also add another template which says like there is no more data to load or something like that. So when I do that, you can see that now it loaded the first page of records. I did that in the pre-render, so it wasn't done by the appendable pager. But if I scroll down, you can see this template, and now more data is loaded. You can see this scroll bar moved to the half of the page. So let me scroll more and just watch the bottom to see the animation. So now there is the animation, and now there is more items. So as you can see, it works. And if I scroll down before GitHub rate limiting hits me, then probably I will get this. There is no more data to load. So now I'm at the end. So that's what the appendable pager can do. If you don't want to use it for scrolling, there is also an option to specify this load template. And if you specify this template, you will be responsible for telling appendable data pager, now you should load more records. So you can, for example, you can put there a button, load more, and click, and there should be, you can say static command, and there should be something like pager. Oh, sorry, maybe the IntelliSense doesn't work, but there should be something like data pager load or something like that. I'm not entirely sure about this syntax. Let me check in this repo quickly. I forgot how the method is named. So just, I will be very quick here. I will go to the samples, come on, and views and control samples. We have samples for all the components in the repo. And here will be this appendable data pager. So the syntax is, yeah, data pager load. So I was correct. I just wasn't sure, and the IntelliSense, it's not built against .vvm5, so it doesn't know about this feature yet. But but if I do that and refresh the page, let's do it like that. Now the auto loading shouldn't be enabled. Instead, there is a button. When you click on it, you will see this animation and more pages would be loaded. So if you don't want to hook it on the scroll events, you can just render your own content to allow the users to explicitly say, okay, load more data. Yeah, I have seen some sites doing that instead of triggering just the scroll based on the scroll events. So if you specify this template, if you don't put it here, then it will be based on the scroll position. So we are tracking if this is the data, the data pager is invisible, but when it gets to the view, then it will trigger loading the next page. Yeah. So this is the appendable data pager, and basically it can append the data to the data set instead of replacing the new things. But you can return just the GridView dataset result or GridView dataset, and it will just combine the data from these two sources. So it will put it at the back. So that was GridView datasets. If you are interested in more features which we are preparing for DotVVM 5.0, there is one big feature which we have almost finished. I just want to show how complex it is. From the first version, we were using newtons of JSON for serializing and deserializing the view models in .vvm. And because the new system text JSON is quite faster and better, it allocates less memory, we thought that the .vvm users would benefit from this change. However, it showed that exchanging these two serializers is not that easy as we expected. You can see there is 248 files being changed just because of that. And sometimes the changes are quite complex because .vvm not only serializes the view model, and because we have a lot of features in that, for example, encryption of some properties, the serialization is quite complex area. And also because of the Visual Studio Extension and IntelliSense, we have to serialize quite a lot of .vvm objects to provide it to the Visual Studio Extension so it could provide the IntelliSense experience. So we also had to rewrite a lot of custom converters we had to do that. So this will be quite a big change. We hope that there will not be many breaking changes, but since these serializers are very different, then probably it can in some cases break something, especially if you have been implementing your own JSON converters. Then I'm afraid it will break some things. But on the other hand, it should be faster, it should allocate less memory. So that's why we why we decided to go this way, even though it's much more complicated than we estimated at the beginning. So that's another big feature. We also are working on the localizable routes because we found several projects where this would be very, very useful. So you will be able to specify routes in multiple languages, and based on that, the runtime would match multiple URLs for the same page and be able to generate links for these pages based on your current culture. So this would be also quite interesting. Thank you for spending some time with us. I hope that you like this feature, and if you have a chance to try it, just give us the feedback. We would be very happy to hear what you think or what you would need on your project. And we want to return to the tradition of having this virtual meetups every month. So I hope that next month we will be able to do another virtual community meetup. Now this last months were quite busy for us, but now it should be better. Okay, so enjoy the rest of your day or evening or morning or whatever your time zone is, and it was a pleasure to see you, and see you next time in .vvm community meetup.